In the mid of April in Sudan, fight broke out between armed forces of Sudan and the Rapid Support Forces.
We start with international calls for calm in Sudan, where at least 3 civilians have been killed and dozens injured amid an outbreak of violence between the army and a powerful paramilitary group. Unrest has been reported in several cities, including the capital Khartoum and the city of Merowe to the north. Both sides are blaming each other for launching attacks.
Armed forces of Sudan, headed by al-Burhan, and Rapid Support Forces, headed by General Mohamed Dagalo. The immediate cause of this crisis is blamed on the rivalry between General Dagalo and General al-Burhan. In this episode, we will get to know a brief introduction about Sudan. Then we will move on to who is Bashir, and how he became the leader of Sudan. Then we will talk about the Darfur conflict and introduction of General Dagalo. After that, we will look out at the time when Bashir was removed, that is the 2019 coup, and then the power struggle between Dagalo and al-Burhan, and finally the conclusion. But before starting the video, let's have a quick routine that I always do. It's introducing my channel. Hello, my name is Anita Khushal and I create content on international issues and history. So if you're interested in such topics, then do subscribe to my channel, and also you can comment down that on which topic I shall be making video next. So moving on. So let us know a little bit about Sudan. Sudan has been in the crisis since its independence. Sudan is situated in northeast of Africa and is one of the biggest countries in the continent. It covers 1.9 million square kilometer. It is also one of the poorest countries in the world. The population of Sudan is predominantly Muslim, and country's official languages are Arabic and English. Earlier, Sudan was jointly ruled by Egypt and Britain, but later on, Egypt was out, and eventually, United Sudan got independence from Britain in 1956. The series of civil war started a year ago since her independence in 1956. The first civil war was from 1955 to 1972. And second civil war started from 1983 to 2005, and this civil war led to the independence of South Sudan in 2011. While the civil war was going on, meanwhile, in 1989, Umar al-Bashir came to power after a coup that happened in 1989. So in order to know the whole context of Sudan, we have to understand the 3 characters who defined the very faith of Sudan. So the first one is Mr. Bashir. Then we got General Hamdan Dagalo, and obviously third one is General al-Burhan. So let's start from Mr. Bashir. Mr. Bashir was born in 1944 to a farming family in northern Sudan. He is a member of Bedouin tribe, which belongs to a larger Jaline group. After completing secondary school in Cairo, then he moved to Khartoum, where he graduated in 1966. And this brought, which means that in Khartoum he was indoctrinated with the Islamist ideology, and this brought the Arab Islamist activism in his life. Bashir joined Egyptian army as a young man when he went with a war with Israel. He became a prominent leader of Islamist sympathizers in the armed forces and led a group of a bloodless military coup against the civilian government of the then Prime Minister in 1989. which means that he was very instrumental in bringing the Islamist regime in Sudan particularly. Hassan al-Turabi was a hardline Islamist politician, a cleric who was ally of Umar al-Bashir, and he was the one who advocated for the Islamist state and ushered a bill introducing the Sharia to all the provinces in Sudan. Under the reign of Umar al-Bashir, Sudan rapidly became a center of revolutionary and Islamist radicalization, which is obvious. Under the rule of Bashir, Osama bin Laden was hosted in Sudan in a series of conferences and for his anti-Western ideologies. At the same time, Bashir showed the pragmatism and allowed the French secret services to capture the Carlos the Jackal in 1994. Bin Laden was forced to leave 2 years later, and Turabi was also marginalized. Bashir was elected for a second term. However, he was in intense pressure to end the civil war, which clearly caused the death of 2 million people already. One of the most controversial chapter in the reign of Bashir was Darfur conflict, which was responsible for the death of people in Sudan and a grave humanitarian crisis in there. In 2003, a conflict broke out in Darfur, and it would establish Umar al-Bashir as one of the ruthless leaders in the history of Sudan. And it is in this moment he would meet one of his rival and also a promising leader who would overtake his power. While Sudan was burning as usual, conflicts also began. While South Sudan was burning as usual, conflict also began in Darfur region. The two rebel groups, which is Sudan Liberation Movement and Justice and Equality Movement, took up the arms against the Bashir government in 2003, accusing that the government was very ignorant to the non-Arab population. In response, government had unleashed a militant group which was named as Janjaweed, and this group is accused of committing war crimes such as murder, rapes and torturing civilians. While this was going on, entered General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. Dagalo was born in 1974 into a Maharia tribe of Rizat community in Darfur. He was nephew of a tribal chief in the camel trading branch of the Rizat, and he got his formal education up to grade 3, and then he dropped out and later became a camel leader basically. Later in his life, he rose to the ranks and he got attention of Umar al-Bashir while the Darfur conflict was going on. He became a part of Janjaweed and fought against the non-Arab population, which catches the attention of Umar al-Bashir. Now let's talk about how RSF came into existence. In 2013, under the leadership of Dagalo, RSF was formed, which includes the combined elements of Janjaweed militants plus the National Intelligence and Security Service. RSF was evolved from so-called Janjaweed militias who fought in Darfur in 2000s, where they were used by Umar al-Bashir to help the army to put down the rebellion. As estimated, 2.5 million people were displaced and 300,000 killed in the Darfur conflict. In the beginning of 2015, RSF fought together with Sudan Army RSF sent troops also in Yemen along with Saudi Arabia and Emirati troops, and allowing the Hemthiti to forge ties with the Gulf powers. In 2017, a law was established which legitimizes the RSF as an independent security forces, and it was passed in that country. Now here we enter where we will find the rivalry of RSF and the armed forces of Sudan. So basically, in order to know the context of the present fighting in Sudan, we have to look back what happened in 2019. So after enduring 30 years of Bashir's rule, people began to protest against the Bashir's regime, and eventually Bashir was overthrown. However, people still continued to protest when people of Sudan demanded for the democratic elections and establishment of the civilian government in Sudan. 4 months later, military agreed to set up the Sovereignty Council and power sharing body of the military officers and the civilians, which would lead Sudan to elections by the end of 2023. And for a brief period of time, Abdel Fattah was appointed as a prime minister for the transition period. He took the office in August last year. But the new government was very short-lived, and this government was overthrown by a coup by military in October 2021.
Reports of a military coup underway in Sudan. International flights to the capital Khartoum have been suspended while the internet has been cut. The country's Prime Minister Abdel Fattah is under house arrest, and military forces have detained most of his cabinet, according to media reports.
Burhan became the de facto leader of the country, and Dagalo became the vice president of the ruling council. Burhan announced that he would hold power until the elections to be held in 2023. Then in April 2023, we saw that till the time the elections were to be settled, till the time the conflict was to be settled, a new conflict had begun. And this conflict began between the two generals, which is al-Burhan, and on the other hand, General Hamdan Dagalo. And the present conflict led to the new civil war. So while reading the history of Sudan, one thing is very clear, that Sudanese, the people of Sudan, never had a peaceful life in their country. Every time they were either influenced or either impacted by civil war, or there would be some dictator who would come, who would rule over them. And obviously again there is a quest of power, because obviously where there is dictatorship, nobody cares about people. So again it is going to be the power struggle between these two generals, and it is to see that who actually eventually who wins. But what will happen in the process, that the people will die, and we will get to know and get to see a severe humanitarian crisis there.